Similar to Marxist theory, we have the non-governmental elitist theory. There are several similarities to Marxist theory. First, that the elite are primarily outside of the government making most of the decisions. Non-governmental elitist theory also says that most of these few top leaders have greater wealth, status, or position in society. The difference is, however, Marxist theory really believes that it is just the capitalists or the corporate leaders. Non-governmental elitist theory is going to say that in addition to the corporate leaders, there are also top military officers, a handful of key political leaders, along with the leaders of major communication fields, major labor leaders, and the heads of various special interest groups. Consider how much attention that a celebrity can garner if they come out in support of something, and that would facilitate the decisions of the government. Again, you have the same concern, though, that an action and the policies that are created as a result of those actions are there to serve the interests of just the elites. Our next theory is the bureaucratic theory, the idea that most of the political power belongs to the bureaucrats, the people who work in the bureaucracy, the ones that you guys drew cartoons making fun of. And here's another cartoon. The bureaucratic theory was largely proposed by Max Weber. It's spelled W-E-B-R, but it's pronounced Weber. Weber looked at Marx's idea and said that he made a huge error in assigning all of the economic power equaling political power. He thought that in addition, large bureaucracies had huge amounts of expertise, that they had very specialized competence, and therefore had a significant amount of power and decision making in our government. These bureaucracies, according to Weber, also said, he said, had power over even corporations, all sorts of different institutions in the way that they enforce their policies and their ideas. Weber said that the decisions were made effectively because of expertise, but the bureaucratic power could be potentially dangerous and overwhelming. He said that most of the credit should be given, well, Weber didn't say it, but his theory says that most credit should be given to technocrats, very technical experts, because policy decision making is becoming increasingly complex. Think about the programming of electronic voting machines, the specifications for satellites, that's not something that a politician would be able to decide, but rather that a bureaucrat would. Think about NASA, etc. And that all matters pertaining to policy questions potentially gave power to these government and industry bureaucrats. The people who are actually enforcing the decision making really have more power. Our final theory that we come to is the pluralist theory. This is the idea that when the president's phone rings, that it depends on the issue, that there is no single group of elite that has a monopoly. Political resources such as money, prestige, expertise, organizational position, access to the mass media are distributed across various forms of government, various levels of government, and different people that interact with the government. So therefore, no single group, even if it has vast resources, could become completely dominant. Political resources are not distributed equally, but they are sufficiently divided that various groups are presented with opportunities. We often think about these political elites being motivated by their own self-interest, yet keep in mind that various political elites have transcended that and acted very selflessly. When you think about 9/11 and the sacrifices that people made, in addition, even our American Revolution, the political elites risked a great deal by signing the Declaration of Independence, and there was no guarantee of success or that they would see the benefits of their actions. And thus we have political change coming from the elites, sometimes in their own self-interest, sometimes in the greater good. When we think about the government and whether or not the government should solve problems. The 1920s, the general view was that the federal government should play a very minimal role. Keep in mind that the federal government was very stable. Most parts of people's lives were very content, thus the Roaring Twenties. Along comes the Great Depression in the 1930s, and even leading through the 1970s, this idea, the general view that the federal government should attempt to solve economic and social problems, that the government should create a safety net. And that was, again, a lingering idea from the Depression all the way through the 1970s. Ronald Reagan began to reverse that in the 80s by reversing the trend using tax cuts. He also wanted to spend less on social programs and to attempt to reduce federal regulation on business. Thus, when we ask the question, should the government step in and solve the problems, that has been an answer that varies depending on our period of history. The next question of social and political change was, should the government expand our country and what should our role in the world be? When our nation was founded, most of our foreign policy decisions were made in a response to France and England, pretty specifically. By the 1940s, we sought to expand the nation into the areas which had been controlled by Mexico, Canada, European powers, etc. As the 1800s continued, by the 1890s, we believed that we should be creating an overseas empire in the Caribbean and the Pacific, yet we wanted to remain isolated from foreign affairs, from European affairs, which was evidenced by our being less willing to enter into World War I as well as World War II. After World War II, we became an international leader, and there wasn't nearly as much of a possibility for us to remain as isolationist. And our attitudes have continued to change with the economy, industrialization, and transportation changes have created all new roles for the U.S. And thus ends our discussion of political power.